Hi witches, in this video we are going to be looking at 5 books on a plant or herbal theme. I'm going to be sharing why I love them, why they might be useful to you. Some of them you will have seen, and I'm pretty certain that maybe a couple of these books you won't have seen. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hi witches, welcome back. Thank you for being here, thank you for watching. If you don't know already, I'm Ren, I'm known as the Cemetery Witch, and as I said in the introduction, we are going to be looking at 5 books on a plant or herbal theme. Now, I have chosen these 5 books out of quite a big selection that I have. Plant magic and plants and folklore is very much my thing, but I've picked 5 that I think are really quite interesting and are completely different to each other. So I think you are going to enjoy these books. I particularly like these ones. So first of all is a book that I'm pretty sure you will be aware of even if you don't have it. I think in terms of learning witchcraft and the books that are easy to find that most people are exposed to, this is one of them. So it is Scott Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs, and it is exactly what it does on the tin, if you like. It is an encyclopedia, so most of the book is the different herbs and information about them. I will say that before the encyclopedia part, he does go into some magical information, and Scott Cunningham tends to do this. So he will talk about magical principles, ethics, he'll talk about tools, he'll talk about the altar, he'll talk about things like visualization. This does only take up 20 pages, but he has given you some magical information that he feels is relevant to the use of herbs and plants in a magical way. So in terms of the actual plants themselves, he explores folk names, he looks at gender, he looks at planet. When we talk about gender, we're talking about the energy of a plant. This is obviously an old-fashioned classification. Plants are generally classified as feminine or masculine, and sometimes that's expressed as active or passive. Different magical teachers explain that in different ways, but this is generally how plants are classified magically. He'll talk about deities related to these plants, he'll talk about their power. So is it protection, is it love, is it fertility, you know, what are the magical correspondences? He speaks about ritual and magical uses, and he does give the binomial name. So lots of information in here. There are really, really beautiful illustrations. You would not, I would think, with most of these plants, be able to identify something just by the drawing. And also, if you need to ID something, then please do use proper sort of field notebooks and sources with which to identify something. I feel like this is a book where you already know the plant, but you are looking up to see what that plant can do magically for you. Some of these plants and herbs sound really, really exotic, I'll be honest, and some of them are the kind of things that you can find in your kitchen. So there is a huge range here. I don't know actually how many there are in here. I haven't found out that information. I haven't counted them, but there's a lot. There is, let's see, there's nearly 300 pages in this book, and most of it is dedicated to listing the actual herbs, so lots. This book's really good for planning spells. It's good for, you could plan a magical garden. So if you were to read this, decide what sort of magical associations you wanted, and if you combined this with a general gardening book, I think you could use it to plan a magical garden. You could also use it to plan a magical apothecary. So you might want to pick out herbs on the basis of their magical properties, and then you could look through here and find what your options are for those magical properties. So for example, if you want just herbs for protection, you would have a look in here, and then you could plan those herbs that you're either going to grow and dry or you are going to buy in for your magical apothecary. So it's really good for learning about plants and their magical uses before deciding to work with them. So I highly recommend this one. I think most people who have started on a witchcraft path have this in their on their person, or they've probably got some of Scott Cunningham's books. So if you enjoy Scott Cunningham's books and you're interested in plants and you're a magical practitioner, then I would say that this is a book for you, really, to be honest. The second book we're going to go to is Vicars' Folk Flora, which is an A to Z of the folklore and uses of British and Irish plants. And this is by Roy Vicary. I picked this up in Courtyard Books in Glastonbury. This one is secondhand. It's a little bit scrappy around the edges, but it's absolutely fine. It's still in working order. I paid £15 for this, which is really good. It's generally online for about £20. I have seen them as high as £30. And this is one of those books that I imagine is going to actually grow in value. I don't know if they're still printing these, but this is such a brilliant book. As you can see, it's quite a hefty tome. It's got nearly 800 pages in it. It is an in-depth breakdown of plants. There are some coloured photos in the middle. There is a section with a few photos, but generally speaking, it's like this Scott Cunningham book in that there are just little illustrations. So again, you would want to find ways to ID your plant. But this gives you all the local folk names, folklore, remedies, uses, wart cunning, so very, very old magical explanations of how to do certain things like get rid of warts. There's a description of the plant in there, and then within all this information there is quotes and poetry and prose. I think this is an absolutely beautiful book. This is more for the love of plants than it actually is in terms of using it magically. It's not a magical book, it's about the folklore and uses. However, some of the information in here, for example the wart cunning and some of the folklore, gives you ideas of the kind of superstitions and fears people used to have and how people used to use it in their little charms and their little magical things that they used to do. So I think this is worth every penny. But equally, I am massively into plants and I'm massively into folklore. So it really depends on who you are as a person and what your magical path looks like. Another book that I really, really love is the Likely Herbarium. Not quite sure how to pronounce that. And this is by the Likely Tale Witch on Instagram. And her name is Kate Johnston. So I bought this book in 2020, so 5 years ago now, and just directly from her Instagram page, she was advertising this. This isn't a book that you can buy in shops, I don't believe. This is something that you get directly from her website, and it is printed to order, I believe. There is 103 plants and herbs in here. And each herb, let me show you, has a magical symbol. Now, you can tell by the way the symbol has been created that perhaps some people would call that a sigil. We're not going to get into the politics of symbols and sigils, but basically, as this is not an individual symbol that someone has created for themselves that will remain private, I'm going to call it a symbol, not a sigil. But anyway, this is absolutely by the by. We're talking about this book. So, there's the printing slip. Still got the printing slip from when I ordered it. But if you can see, each plant has got a symbol. There is a description. There is folk names. There's planetary information. There's the element. There's the energy or the gender. There is the family, the genus and the species. So a serious book on plants, but there's also in this information there is magical uses. And the best thing that I love about this book, which sounds awful because obviously all the work that's gone into it and the illustrations is part of it, but the best thing about this book is next to each plant there is actually a blank page. So you can write your own information that you found out, folklore, recipes, spell, if there's a particular spell for a particular plant that you really, really love, you're basically free to add to this book. The idea of this book is it's a creative book where you can put your own mark on it, and you kind of collaborate with the author, Kate Johnson, to create sort of a plant grimoire that works really, really well for you. So you can still buy it. You get it direct from Kate's website. I will put a link down below in the description, and these are printed to order. So they're about, I think, 45 pounds, which is about right, really. When you think that independent witchy magazines are about £15 before postage, and this is actually printed to order, that's about right. You're getting a lot of information, and you're also getting an opportunity actually to record your findings. This book is designed to be drawn on, decorated, written in. You could put cuttings in here. I just love this approach to magical books. And on the back, actually, I haven't noticed this before, but there's a symbol here and there's some beautiful illustrations here. So absolutely worth the money, I think. I have not yet written in this myself. I just work in a different way. And I bought this because I wanted to support Kate. So really, really lovely book. Well worth checking out. The next book I have is quite an involved book. I can't remember where I bought this. It was either the bookshop opposite Courtyard Books in Glastonbury, or I got this from Avery. I really can't remember, but it is The Witch's Herbal Apothecary by Marija Mianowska. I'm very sorry if I've got that name wrong. And it is a rituals and recipes for a year of earth magic and sacred medicine making book, and it's beautiful. Let me just show you. There is lots of plant stuff, but before that there's chapters on the great spiral of life, what is a witch, elements of magic, healing the wise woman within. So there's lots of magical activities, and there's stuff on witches' tools, but there's lots of practical information as well. So preparing your home apothecary, step-by-step harvesting of herbs and drying them, creating sacred space, so casting a circle. There's poems in here, there's information on riding the currents of nature and getting to know yourself, which is obviously big in terms of magical practice. There's stories. It's just a very, very beautiful in-depth book. I mean, there's morning elixirs, how to build an epic elixir, and there's all the information on what you need to have as a base and how to do it. It's very, very earthy, very gentle. There's lots of beautiful graphics and illustrations, and so much practical advice and exercises, and then there are recipes. So for example, herbal infused apple cider vinegar. There's juices and tinctures and chocolate and all sorts of things. Now, I always complain about books being expensive these days. So you'll buy a book and it'll be 16 or 17 pounds for a small sort of paperback. And I remember when books were like £6, and I know we've moved on from there. However, this book was £17.99, and I do actually think that this is worth it. I don't know how this much stuff has been crammed into this book. It's really quite incredible. And let me show you actually some of the illustrations. I've just been past that one. It's absolutely beautiful. It's clear that a lot of work went into this book, and there are pages as well dedicated to individual herbs as well, so you can learn. It's not just practical exercises and recipes, you can learn information about those herbs as well. So I haven't actually used this book very much, but I'm going to. I obviously need to tap into this a little bit more than I have. I obviously picked it up because it looks amazing and incredible, and I just have not got round to doing this, but I will. Absolutely brilliant book. And then the last book that I have is probably my absolute favourite. It is from a book, well, it was from a sort of a magical charity shop, if you like. No, not even a charity shop. A magical shop that used to sell tools, jewellery, magical clothing, magical books, all sorts of esoterica. It was at the bottom of Glastonbury High Street. I can't remember what the shop was called, but I can picture the man who used to work in there. And it was one of the best shops in Glastonbury. Now it is an Indian clothes shop, and there's nothing wrong with that. I've bought things in there, but they have a sister shop at the top of the high street as well. And it just seems like such a shame that the man, obviously, he didn't run it anymore. But I got this book. It's called From Agar to Zonri. I don't know if that's how you pronounce Zenri. I know how you pronounce this one, Agar, because that is actually my maiden name, which is a really, really unusual name. So Agar is Agar. It's a type of seaweed, and from that seaweed they make a type of jelly which they quite often use in laboratories for things. But yeah, I saw this and I was like, well, I've got to buy this. I don't particularly feel an affinity to my maiden name because of certain family history, but it was the name I was born with. So yeah, very, very interesting book. And it says on the back, a truly eye-opening book ranging from herbal remedies and country recipes to the often surprising uses of plants in medicine and industry today. It's by Ron Freethy, and it starts off talking about his great-grandmother, and her absolute expertise in foraging and using plants. And this is not just out in the countryside, but on the coast as well, and how she used to use plants for food and medicine. And he used to be with her as a small boy, and this is obviously some of the information he's picked up. It's absolutely beautiful. It talks about plants in history, and then it goes through chapters. So we have plants of the sea, plants of the coastline, we have woodland shrubs, we have woodland trees, we have herbs, we have fields and hedgerows, we have hills and moors, we have riversides, and then there is a section on collecting and storing for herbal or culinary uses. So it really has a lot of information in. And not only does he talk about the uses, but he talks about the folklore and the history of these plants. It is such a charming book, and it is one of my favourites, not just out of herbal and plant books, but out of all of them. And I'm just so glad that I got this, and I'm just so sorry that that shop in Glastonbury is shut down. This is highly educational, but it's one of those books where you don't really feel like you're being educated. It is just an absolute joy and a pleasure. And it was written by a very clever and well-known man. He later went on to become a well-known naturalist. He's worked on TV. He's the editor of the British Naturalists Association, their journal, which is called Countryside. He is an author, and he has worked with Granada TV, Channel 4. So very well known, and he obviously put everything that he learned from his great-grandmother, he put that to use, and I bet she would be really, really proud. So there we go, 5 very, very different books. They have lots of different uses, lots of different purposes, and lots of different ways that you can use them and enjoy them. I think that plant books are always useful, no matter their format. And me personally, I will never get bored of them. I'd love to know what your favourite herbal plant books are. Do you have any of these? I would love to know. Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching.